Boy, it is kind of. Am I on? Am I on? I can't hear it. It is a little bit shallow today. Everybody must be up in the Northwoods, right? You know that's a unique Wisconsin term. You don't hear that anywhere else, but around here, we're up in the Northwoods. We're up having vacation in the lakes. I live right off of 53, and every time there's a holiday weekend, 53 becomes just solid with campers and boats heading up north somewhere. I don't know where. Well, I hope you had a good and safe 4th of July and no one got injured. We dodged a bullet at our house where somebody almost got injured. Good thing I didn't cause it. I was culpable, but I did not cause it. So, today, I'm going to go out of my normal practices. Because usually, I give pretty strong biblical sermons. I believe in biblical sermons. Today I'm not going to give you a whole lot of Bible texts, but it is a biblical concept. I want to ask the question, why? And I want you to think about this seriously, because I think too often we don't think deeply about why. Have you ever asked yourself why you live here? Why? Because I was born here. Right? My family lives here. But why? Could you move? Could you change locations? It's possible, but there's something keeping you here. There is a why behind it. And sometimes we don't think about that why. Maybe we don't like the answer when we think about the why. Why do you do what you do for a living? There's a why behind it. Some people do it just for the money and they don't enjoy it. Right? It's not something that their heart is into, and they might do it just because they need cash or because it's convenient. Or there's possible multiple reasons why, but a lot of times we just kind of stumble through life and do things without really asking ourselves why. Your activities, why do you like them? Why are they so pleasurable to you? What is it that you have inside of you that drives you to do what you do? Why are you a Christian? Can you answer that? Have you thought deeply about why I'm a Christian? Why are you Seventh-day Adventist? Is there a difference? Could there be a difference between being a Christian and a Seventh-day Adventist? Why? Are you a Seventh-day Adventist because your parents were? Or grandparents were? Why are you here in this church today? Man, this guy's making my brain hurt, asking all these why questions. I just do it. I just do it. There is a purpose in this, though. I'm going to get to that. Rarely do you spend much time and energy thinking about the whys of what you do. This is very true in addictions. When you ask a person, why do you drink? Why do you take opioids? People will give you all kinds of superficial reasons, but they don't really tell you the deep why. They don't want to think about the deep why. But there is a reason why we do what we do. Why do you watch TV? Why do you shop online? Why? There always is a reason, but we don't always think about it. Mom and Dad answered our why questions with because I said so, and so we stopped asking the question why, didn't we, as children? And so maybe because so many times the why question was squashed, we just decided it can't be that important, so I'll stop asking why, because the parents don't think it's too important. They keep saying, shut up, I said so. Do as I say and stop asking why. So as adults, we stopped asking why. Why is not easy. To ask seriously the why question and delve into it is not an easy journey. Many times we don't want to dig into the whys because it's painful, it hurts, and we don't like where it's taking us. Why did God create the universe? I don't know. Why did God create Satan? These are questions people ask me. Why did God create Satan if he knew the world was going to go to pot and all sin and pain? Why? Why did God do this? Why didn't God just destroy Satan? People ask that question all the time too. Why did God create me? Not why did he create humanity, but why did he create me? Do I have a purpose in God's grand scheme? Do you have a purpose in God's grand scheme? Scripture says that he knitted you together in your mother's womb. He knew about you before you were born. Did God have a grand purpose? Do you understand what it is? Have you delved into why you are where you are and who you are in this time and location? Have you sat down and had a one-on-one conversation with God and asked him, why am I here today? What's my purpose in life? And who determines that purpose? Or what determines that purpose? Do I determine the purpose? Do circumstances determine the purpose? You know, I just happen to be born in Wisconsin, and therefore, because of that, then I have to follow a certain line and I have to go a certain direction. Is that preordained for me? Or can my choices affect my purpose? Wow, why does he ask so many hard questions? I didn't come this morning for brain cramp. Again, I'm asking these because we're going to get to something very sensitive here in a minute. I'm going to ask you a question. Is there a bigger reason why you are here today? Why God created you and placed you in this church, in this time, in this city? Does he have a plan and a purpose for you today? And do you know what it is? There's a book that came out about 5 or 6 years ago by a Jew by the name of Simon Sinek. He's a secular Jew. He doesn't have a real strong theological background of God. I mean, he's more of a kind of a cultural Jew, but then he really believes in the theology of the Old Testament. But he wrote a book called Start With Why. And it is a book not written for Christian circles. It's a book written for business. And all of his illustrations are business related, but he contends that unless you understand the why, the what and the how of what you do doesn't matter. So I read this book maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it intrigued me because it now led me to all these other questions like, why does my church exist? Why did God place me here in this church? And what is my why, and what is my church's why? And it started me on a track of thinking. So I have bought this book for my elders in the last church, and I made them all read it with me. This was a church in California, and I've done the same for here. And I wanted them to think about this deeply as to why. So I started with why, and I started to try to understand why I'm a Christian, and I think I know why. I know why I'm a Christian, because I have personalized God's love for me. He really does care about me. And I am so appreciative of that I'm going to follow him. I have studied, and not only studied, but I have experienced that love firsthand. I know why I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I have studied the doctrines of this church and tried to disprove every one of them. I argued vehemently against them. And in the process of doing so, I have accepted the doctrines of this church as being biblical. They weren't easy for a non-Adventist to accept them. They weren't handed to me as a child. They weren't given to me in a culture that I was raised in. So I fought tooth and nail. I know why I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I also knew why my church in Cleveland existed, and I'm going to take you through this process. And I'm going to explain this to you because I did this in my last church and I never got an answer why. Never. In 5 years could I figure out why that church existed. So my church in Cleveland didn't look like a church. It was a storefront ministry. 3,000 square feet on the main floor, 3,000 square feet in the basement. And we did community outreach in inner city Cleveland. Now, learning the why took time, because when I first started that church, I didn't know why I was there. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I did a lot of stuff. I went here and there. I did this. I sent out Bible study cards. I was doing seminars. I was trying to start a church, and I didn't have a understanding of why I was doing all this stuff. I just needed to do it. So when I first got to Cleveland in 1997, I had no idea why. I just did stuff. It took almost 4 years of doing stuff and failing frequently and getting frustrated frequently before I started to process, why am I here? What am I doing? I'm a country boy from Wisconsin. Why am I in inner city Cleveland? Why did God put me here? I don't have the context or the culture. I don't understand. Why am I here? But once I started to understand the why, everything changed. Everything changed. I had clarity for what we were to do and how we were to do it. So the why came first, and now what we were doing and how we were going to do it all fell into line with once we understood why we were there. And those who didn't agree or didn't understand the why, who had a different why, disappeared. And they did. We lost half of our church when our why became clear. We were worshiping 85 to 90 people. We dropped down to 40 once the why became clear. And those who understood the why stuck with it. The rest left. So this is one of the dangers of finding out the why, is that some people don't like it. Knowing the why helped us make decisions. We were no longer shooting in the dark. We were no longer guessing and trying everything to see what worked. It caused people to commit, because once we could articulate our why and say, this is why God placed us in this spot at this time, and these are our constituents, these are the people we're supposed to minister to, it became so clear that people joined us and wanted to become a part of it. The why gave them reason for joining. It moved people to commit more time and more money because they understood the why and they accepted the why. So what was our why? It was a mission to give everything away, to serve other people. We were in a very economically and socially downward area that had a lot of homelessness, a lot of people under the poverty level. We were there to put the face of Jesus on our mission and to serve them with the intent that they would see Jesus in us. We did park ministry. We had all kinds of events in the park. We would draw 500 to 600 people from the community to our park ministry. A little church of 45 people. We had the city of Cleveland asking us if they could come and participate in our park ministry. It was amazing. But our why was clear. We knew our community, we knew our constituents, we knew their needs, and we knew why we were there to take care of them. This was a tent that was donated to us. It was a circus tent. It was 80 foot by 120 foot. And we would pack that place. We did food bank ministry. We did a homeless ministry. We did park puppets for the children. That went well for a little while until some gangs showed up one night. We had 2 rival gangs show up in the park while we were doing park ministry. And the interesting thing was that we actually talked one of the gangs into leaving, and no fight took place that night. We gave them some food. We talked to them about Jesus. We told them how much Jesus loved them. They had chains. They had knives. These were 14 to 18-year-old kids. There was about 20 of them. We talked to them for over 45 minutes, and they left. We then packed up our stuff, and the other gang showed up. We didn't have as much success with them. But the first gang left, and there was no brawl that night because we were in the park doing a ministry for Jesus. We did bicycle repair. Do you know why a lot of bikes get stolen in the inner city? Because there's no dads to teach the kids how to put the chain back on the thing when it falls off. And so the kids will steal another one because they don't know how to fix their bike. So we started fixing kids' bikes and showing them how to do little repairs, like putting the chain on or fixing a flat or simple things, not huge. But we got some of the men of the church that said, we're going down to the park and we're going to fix bikes for the kids. It was amazing what took place. We actually went and played wiffle ball in the park with kids. We started doing this on Sunday morning, and we took breakfast down there for them, because a lot of these kids don't get breakfast on the weekends. Now again, this was our context where we were in Cleveland. I'm not suggesting it for you. I'm saying we figured out our why where we were. And this was important for them. But the why for the church in Cleveland is not your why. I'm not suggesting you do any of this stuff. But I'm suggesting you need to figure out what your why is. And once you do, there will be clarity and there will be buy-in, and you will have a mission. It helped us to define our community, to define our primary actions. You know, one of the things, primary activities, one of the things that happens in church is we do a lot of stuff, don't we? Right? We're doing this, we're doing busy work. But does it really fulfill our why if we don't know what our why is? We feel good because we're getting stuff done, well, but that stuff may be not that significant. And maybe the getting stuff done is more important about me doing it than it is for the people I'm serving. And this is where you understanding your why is extremely important. It determined how we spent our money and how we spent our time. People would come to us with requests, and if it didn't fit our why, we would say, no, we can't do that. We won't do that. We will not take time and money away from our primary objective of why we exist, why we are here. So sometimes other churches, other Adventist churches would ask us to do stuff with them. And the question was, will this activity directly impact our mission field? If not, it's a simple no. Well, we'd like you to come over to our evangelistic series in one of the suburbs. How does that impact my mission field? It doesn't. We're not doing it. People get so mad at us. But I've never understood, and excuse me if I offend anyone today, I mean no offense. I've never understood why Adventists advertise to other Adventists for an evangelistic series. We're here for them. Quit talking to each other. Oh, that doesn't make any sense to me. No, thank you. I would tell churches who would send us all these brochures, we don't want to do your program for you. We have people that need us, and we're going to work for them. So I apologize if I offended you, but I don't understand that mentality. I just don't. So this is a quote from the book, Why? Listen very carefully. On April 5th, 1992, at approximately 8 in the morning, Walmart lost its why. On that day, Sam Walton, Walmart's inspired leader, the man who embodied the cause around which he built the world's largest retailer, died. Soon after, Walden's oldest son, Robeson Walton, who succeeded his father as chairman of the company, gave a public statement. No changes are expected in the corporate direction, control, or policy, he said. Sadly, for Walmart employees, customers, and shareholders, that's not what happened. Walmart radically changed when Sam died. Radically changed. Walmart lost its why. And it affected a lot of people. It's affected its employees. It's affected its customers. You see, as long as Sam was alive, the company knew its why. This is also true for Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines owner and the man who started it had a clear vision of the why he was in business, why they were flying, why they were doing what they were doing, who their customers were. When he died about 3 or 4 years ago, Southwest started to change. Now this is sad because the why should be so ingrained in the culture that it doesn't require a leader like a Sam. And it has to be true in a church for the reason that pastors come and go. And if your why is the pastor, your why will be changing all the time. You understand that? How many times do churches wait for the pastor to come in to give us direction, to teach us what to do? Lead us, oh honorable seminary graduate. No. The local church should know its why. It should do its why regardless of when the pastor comes in. I should be told by you what your why is, and I should conform to that. And then the church isn't flipping and flopping like a fish out of water trying to figure out how to do where, how. No. The why should be so ingrained in who this church is that irrespective of your pastoral leadership, that why doesn't change. Because your community doesn't change. The clientele that you serve doesn't change. Just because a leader changes shouldn't change the why. So on approximately August 31st, 2014, Walk of Faith, which was my church in Cleveland, lost its why. I left in 2014. Today, the ministry has been disbanded, the assets were sold, and all the people who were once actively engaged in a mission and vision with a purpose were left wandering without a home. Because the new pastor came in, he didn't like the why, he didn't like the work, and he said, we're going to shut her down. And they did. And that is the travesty of our system in which pastors control the why of the church. The why needs to be in the very DNA of this church. Unfortunately, there are very few churches who know what their why is. And I don't want to tell you what your why is. That's not my job. My job is to help you fulfill your why, but not to tell you your why. We're going to get to a problem here in just a minute. On February 16th, I arrived in Chippewa Valley looking to start anew. Excited to begin a new why with a new group of people. And I'm wondering, do you know why your church exists? I preached this sermon in my last church in California about 2 years ago. And I said something that offended a great deal of the church members. I said, I've been here for 3 years and I have no clue why this church exists. And I didn't. They weren't sure they were Seventh-day Adventist. They didn't have a ministry context. They didn't have a mission. They were playing church. And so they got highly offended with me because I challenged them. I said, I don't know what your why is. And I don't know what to do. And oh boy, you would have thought that I did something disrespectful to their children or something because they were so upset with me. So I am here not waiting 3 years to say, I don't know why this church exists. I'm here at the beginning saying, do you know what your why is? Now, it should be obvious, shouldn't it? Except it isn't. Because for some, church exists to make me feel good. Church exists so that I have a safe place to go where people who think like me can be there. Church exists for some people so that we can have a good Sabbath school class or a children's program. Is that really the why of this church? To keep the programs that you have going on? To continue them and make sure that they don't alter or change? Is that your why? Because for many churches, that is the reason they exist. They become an entity on themselves to protect the culture that is in that building. Any why that starts with I think or I want isn't God's why. Why did God plant this church here for this time? Why has God called you to be a part of this church? And what is God expecting this church to do? Those are the questions that will help you define your why. So if you're not sure if you're a Seventh-day Adventist or not, then you see how that muddies the water as to the why of your church? In my last church, I had several letters after I preached this sermon. And one of the letters said that the reason for this church is to minister to disenfranchised Adventists who are leaving and to give them a safe place. That was a letter I received. Another letter was what I just described earlier. It was an email that said, this church exists so that we can keep the culture of Adventism going. I reject those whys because they're very self-centered. And they haven't incorporated the question, why does God want this church here at this time? What is He calling you to do? Now, I should have known this was a holiday weekend and there wasn't going to be a lot of people here, and I wanted to launch this. I believe that God has called churches into existence to not to serve themselves, but to serve others. I believe it's our job to seek and save lost people. And you don't do that from the comfort of a pew. It's dirty work, it's hands-on work, and it's all hands-on-deck work. It's not a few. There are some things that we have created in the culture of church that I think are harmful. For instance, let me ask you a question. When I say the word evangelism, how many of you think of a public speaker coming in to do a program? Okay, raise your hand. You think when I say evangelism, you think of a public speaker coming in to do 15 to 20 series, and they're going to have, that's what we all do. So you're thinking evangelism is an event. It's an event that a church does once a year. You gear up for it, and you get her done, and you go, boy, am I glad that's done. We got it 6 months before we have to gear up for the next one, right? Let me squash that one right now, because evangelism is not an event. It is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. And it is not just a speaker coming in. It is every single member of the church sharing Jesus with friends and family on a constant basis. That's evangelism. The speaker is reaping. I'm not suggesting you don't bring in speakers. I'm not suggesting you don't have a reaping event. But when we think of that as evangelism, then we send out these flyers cold to people in the community who have no knowledge of who we are. And when they see the flyer, they get scared. They have no relationship to the church. They haven't put a face to Seventh-day Adventism. And so they throw it away, whether it's a flyer or a booklet or whatever we send to them. And then we feel good because we did evangelism and nobody shows up. Do you know what the most expensive part of a reaping series is? Advertisement. Right? Do you know how much a church would save if everybody in the church invited one person, had built a relationship, had made friends with them, and everyone, if there's 100 people in this church, every one of you brought one person, do you know how much money you'd save? Plus, once they're your friends and they come to an evangelism event, guess what? They're more apt to stay because they have a relationship. They don't see Adventists as these little green pointy-eared people who are weird. They see them as regular folks. Why am I saying all this? Because a year from now, I want to do a reaping series here. But I don't want to do it to an empty audience. I want us to figure out why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing so that we can bring people into the kingdom. So now do you understand why I'm asking the why question? Do you understand why this why is so important? Because we need to sell ourselves out for lost people. We need to stop worrying about some of our traditions. One of the reasons I've asked to make some changes in the way we do worship is so that we are more palatable to lost people. You see, hymns are comfortable to you because you've grown up with them. But you know what people out there listen to? They listen to contemporary Christian music on the radio. And when you have none of that in here, they think you're aliens. They're off-put by it. So are we willing to make enough changes so that when people come in here, they're comfortable, that they feel like, hey, these people are kind of normal, sort of. They eat funny, but other than that, they're still normal. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I was trying to elicit a little bit of a joke there. My wife made me eat funny when I came into this church too. Acts of the Apostles, page 9. The church is God's appointed agency for the salvation of humanity. It was organized for service, and its mission is to carry the gospel to the world. From the beginning, it has been God's plan that through His church shall be reflected to the world His fullness and His sufficiency. The members of the church, those whom He has called out of darkness into His marvelous light, are to show forth His glory. The church is the repository of the riches of grace of Christ. Through the church will eventually be made manifest even to the principalities and powers in heavenly places, the final and full display of the love of God. You believe that? What are we doing about it? So, step 1 in evangelism is to pray that God would change my heart to love lost people. That's step 1. Step 2 is to pray for God to show you someone that you can talk to about Jesus Christ. Step 3, be kind and be a friend to them. Don't start beating them over the head with Bible quotes. Don't start criticizing their lifestyle, but accept them and love them. Step 4, build a relationship with them. Relationship means trust, so that someday you can say to them, would you like to know more about my Jesus, who has changed my life? That is evangelism. The word evangelism means good. Evangelion from the Greek means good news. That's all it means. Do you think that having a relationship with Jesus is good news? If you do, why wouldn't you want to share it with somebody? So when I was at camp meeting, I was hosting the It Is Written speaker who was doing a seminar, a week-long seminar on how to do friendship evangelism, basically. Stuff I remember back from seminary. Anyway, he gave this really funny, cute illustration. I think I might have shared it with a couple of people. He said this retired pastor and his wife had gone to a church and they had potluck. And in the car on the way after potluck, his wife turns to him and says, did you try some of that cherry rhubarb pie? It was the best pie I've ever had in my life. And he looked at her and he says, why didn't you tell me this when I was still at potluck and I could have had some? And the point of the illustration is, why are we waiting to tell people about Jesus if it's that good for you? Why do you wait till it's too late? Maybe your why is that God has put you next to this person for this time and this place. Maybe He has called you like Philip when Philip was sent to the Ethiopian eunuch. And maybe you are there and it's a God appointment. And God has a person who is struggling and asks the question, can God truly love me? Maybe you're the person who's there to say, I know He can because He loves me. That's evangelism, folks. That is sharing the love of God with broken, wounded people. And we've got to stop being afraid of it. Because if you truly love Jesus and you know He loves you, why would you wait to share that after you leave the potluck? We'll be talking more about this, I'm sure. You'll get sick of me talking about it. But I want you to think about this seriously. Why does the Chippewa Valley Church exist? Why has God called us to this place at this time? And from that why, I hope we can determine what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And it'll make sense. And it'll work. And everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people will say, I get it. And some people won't. And some people will say, I don't like that. But it doesn't make sense to just keep doing stuff all over the place without really having an understanding of why we do what we do. So with that, it's the 4th of July. I'm letting you out early. It's only 11:45. And you guys are amazed. After all the times I make you stay late, and this time I get you out early. Amen. We're going to have our closing song. I'll have our benediction here, and we'll let you out early today. Benediction.